Oh,
As
That
we
would,
know, all this is going to happen. We just need to focus on ourselves and be ready and help share it with the world, which is what this ministry is for and what we're trying to do. So help us spread that message so when it does happen, people will not be fearful.
That's right.
Melissa, that would
Uh-huh.
be like the blind leading the blind, maybe?
And they're both going to fall in a ditch. I'm glad that my Savior has perfect vision.
Amen.
well, when I went through nursing school, when we had learned something, we would also have to learn how to apply it in our lives. And I wonder if that is also part of their curriculum when they display the Ten Commandments. Because also involved in those Ten Commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness. And thou shalt not steal. Okay, today's reading is Psalms 95, 1-7. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hands are the deep places of the earth. The strength of his hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. And we are also told to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Okay, Keith.
Okay, let me share screen. Okay, shall we bow our heads for prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for being here with us today. Be with me as I speak today. Be with my words. Be with us and everybody that is here and listening. In your name, amen. Well, today I'm going to talk about the daily and abomination of desolation. Basically, what I'm going to go through is some of my beliefs, what the abomination of desolation is. And then we're going to go through what the pioneers said that the deity was in the abomination of desolation. So if you're looking today to find out what the answer to the daily is, you're not going to find it today. But we're going to go in what the history was. But before we start, I have this here text, quote John 16:13. Jesus said, howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. Not man, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall speak, and he will show you things to come. The events to be future will be discerned by prophecy and will be understood. And this was in 1888, and I'm sorry I did not put where I got this from. When you understand the truth, they will make fun of you just like Noah. We have asked for a why have you asked for a revelation of truth daily, weekly, monthly? Do you really want the truth no matter what, no matter where it leads you? Or do you have everything figured out and need nothing? Nothing more. That's what I put. Now, before we start out with this, as people know, Saudi Arabia is doing away with the dollar. And so I went and did an investigation. I said, well, where does the Vatican come in with this? And I'm going to show you some things from an article that I came across. It's a very long article. And this here is not part of the article, but this is a representation of what they think that the Tower of Babel looked like. Now, this building here you see is the Vatican Bank in Rome. You know, it looks similar to the Tower of Babel. Now, this here third one is called the BIS, BIS, Bank of International Settlements. This here is where all the banks make their decision. Not all of them, but most of the major banks are based on things that happened in the Bank of International Settlements. And this article went through the activities, some of the activities that went on in this bank. So I had this question of where they get the evidence that the Vatican is behind this. Well, this is the title of this article, Bank for International Settlements, the Vatican's central bank. And one of the comments there was the Vatican's ownership of the bank can be traced through the Rothschilds' $500 trillion dynasty. And so the people that think that how that the Vatican controls this planet today, people don't see it. That's because a lot of this stuff is hidden. Okay, now we will start out with a quote from Mrs. White. After speaking of the end of the world, Jesus comes back to Jerusalem. The city then sitting in pride and arrogance and saying, just a second here. Rex, I can hear him in the background, saying, I sit a queen and shall see no sorrow. And then it says, see Revelation 18:7. As his prophetic eye rests upon Jerusalem, he says that she was given up to destruction. The world will be given up to its doom. The scenes that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. And if you ever went and looked at what happened, Josephus talked about it, about the destruction of Jerusalem, that it was complete. So Mrs. White tells us that this is going to be, it's going to happen again. We as Seventh-day Adventists, a lot of us just put that, okay, that's nothing. Don't worry about it. But Israel, Jerusalem will be destroyed again. And we're going to look at Revelation 18:7. Now, remember, in Mrs. White's time, there was no state of Israel because it did not come about until 1948. Now, I was going to look at Revelation 18:7, which she said, it just quoted about during the destruction of Israel. How much she hath glorified herself. Do we see Israel glorifying herself today? Yes, we do. And lived deliciously. And much torment and sorrow give her. Have we seen this last year, torment and sorrow? Yes. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. They think that they are above everybody. And if you have looked in the news recently, you have seen that the image of Israel has been greatly decreased in this last year. Now let's go and see what the Bible says about it. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. And let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter herethro, or thereinto. For those be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. This verse tells us that the desolation, most likely the abomination of desolation, is all about Jerusalem and Israel. The Bible will explain itself if we look. And so when we look and we find and we talk about the daily and the abomination of desolation, most people look at Daniel 12 and Daniel 8. I think the actual answers of that is in Daniel 11. So you see here, it says that Jerusalem is encompassed with armies, not nations, but armies. That the desolation is nigh up. And Ellen White says it's going to be repeated. So this here desolation of Israel or Jerusalem is coming. And I believe it may be soon. So in AD 70, they was given 3.5 years warning when they came up. The armies came up and then backed away. Could October 7 last year have anything to do with a warning of a desolation soon to come upon them? Time will tell. Daniel 8:8. Therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. I have said for many years that the great horn on the he goat is most likely Israel. The other much less possible choice is America. But I believe for a long time, Charles Whitting believed, a lot of people believe the same thing, that it is a possibility that it was is Israel is this great horn. And who is the 4 winds that's come up? Do not know. But one of them that comes up is the little horn, which is the Vatican. Now we're going to look to see, is Israel surrounded by armies today? Yeah, they're surrounded by nations that hate them, but the prophecy says armies. So we're going to look at the surroundings of Israel. First, to the north is Lebanon and Syria. And if you are someone that received my emails over the last 10 years, you'll see that in Lebanon and Syria, and Hezbollah is in Syria, and they are constantly attacking Jerusalem and Israel. In fact, there was a missile that was set up this morning, so I was notified. Going to the east is Jordan. And people will classify Jordan as an enemy. Well, Jordan is an enemy, but Jordan has made peace with Israel. And when Iran attacked them a few months ago, Jordan shot down a whole bunch of the missiles that came over before they even got to Israel. So even though they may be classified as an enemy, they are helping. To the south is Egypt. Egypt is also an enemy, but like Jordan, these people respect the nuclear power that Israel has. So Egypt has not been attacking them recently. In fact, Egypt is right now, they are in the negotiations to get the hostages released. And on the west is the sea. And we will talk more about the sea in a little bit. And this here, I'm going to show you a page of some of these articles that I have. These are some of the stuff about the history of the daily and abomination in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is a sermon 2 from Blythe. Daniel's daily, the pioneer view of the daily. Having now ascertained that the daily is paganism, and the transgression of desolation or the abomination that make desolate is the papacy, and that the special sanctuary of the paganism was the pantheon, and that the place of its location was Rome, we inquire further. So here we see who that the desolation, the transgression of desolation is. They believe that it was the papacy, and I believe that today also. And the fulfillment of the abomination of desolation took place when Titus came in AD 70. He placed the standards of Rome that had the idols of Rome illustrated on them, and they were placed in the sacred presence in area that extended out around the walls, and that was a sign for the Christians to flee. So here I put a question: what are the standards? Was that considered the paganism or what they call the daily? I was not explained exactly what the standards of Rome was, but that it was the idols that Rome had put there. So let's go and let's look at the different translations of the abomination of desolation. First Mark and then Matthew. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him readeth and understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And then let's go to Matthew. In Matthew, it says it's standing in the holy place. See, in Mark, it's standing where it ought not, and Matthew, it's standing in the holy place. In Matthew, it is standing in the whole place. In Mark, it is standing where it not. Of course, pagan Rome should not be standing in the sacred presence of the Temple of Jerusalem. Matthew and Mark aren't disagreeing. They are broadening the definition of the abomination of desolation. So when we study these things, you need to find out the different places where it's studied and compare them and try to get a meaning out of that. Now, there is some Seventh-day Adventists that was saying that this was fulfilled in 2015 when the Pope was standing in Congress. Well, if you take both, because it was standing where it ought not to, but if you take both of these in comparison, Congress is not the holy place or most holy place. Now, this here is, I always use the King James Version, and if I use another version, I tell you, and this is I will use both versions here. Daniel 11:45, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. That's the King James Version. And so if you want to know another version, it tells you more specifically what the glorious holy mountain is. The CEV, after this, he will set up camp between the Mediterranean Sea and Mount Zion. Then he will be destroyed, and no one will be able to save him. And this is talking about the tabernacles of his palace, which I believe is the Vatican. And those things we will yet to be seen if this comes. And here's the text, just a second. And you remember I told you before that Daniel 11, I think, has more of the answers. I talked about this a little bit from the last time we spoke. Daniel 11:30. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. And so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So we have two. One of them has an indignation against the holy covenant, and the other forsakes the holy covenant. What two nations do we have today that we know in the near future will forsake the holy covenant? Well, that's the Vatican, and that is, we know, the United States of America will also forsake the Holy Covenant. Mrs. White puts this text in the future, as we will see. But first, we want to go see. Cyprus here is Chittim. If anybody wants to know the locale of it, and the pink area here is the coast of Israel. Now, what did our pioneers believe? And from the time that the daily shall be taken away, and the abomination and maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. And that's from Daniel 12. And you notice the word "and" in here. So these are two different entities that's doing this. Now look at the daily. Now put over here to the right. In Daniel, the prefix HA is used. And HA means, what I understand from this article, is the. So we go to, it also can mean continue. It's transcribed as continue in Exodus 29:38. It's also perpetual or constant. In Psalms 25:15, it can mean ever. Numbers 9:28, it can mean always. Now, this is from F.C. Gilbert, a scriptural apposition of the daily. And it's on Daniel 8. Continuing our scriptural study of Daniel 8, we find that Rome magnified himself against Christ, and from him the daily Ha-Tamid was taken away. From whom was the Ha-Tamid daily taken away? Is as much as Gabriel said that the little horn is Rome. And you see, that's what we talked about before. The identity, when the horn is broken, that is Israel, the four that come up, one of them is called the little horn. And here, this little horn, they believe is Rome. I believe it is also Rome. And the angel's interpretation of the little horn deals with conditions brought about by this Rome power. We might be justified in concluding that this deity was taken away from Rome. And that there is from his article. The modern theologians are teaching that the deity represents Christ's work in the sanctuary. That's what people are teaching now. But the pioneers understood the deity to be paganism. And so I go with what Mrs. White was believed, that it was paganism. And that was William Miller that brought that out. Both the pioneers and the modern theologians agreed that the transgression of desolation is the papacy. No questions on that. But the question is, what is the daily? In Daniel 12:11, you do not get that the daily is something like the papacy. But in Daniel 8:13, you get that it works like the papacy in doing two things: trampling on the sanctuary and the host. But so the daily and the transgression of desolation they do the same thing, that is trampling on the sanctuary and the host. When you go Daniel 8:30-36, you see that the activity of the daily differently on the activity that is accomplished by these two things. And when shall these things occur? And I believe at the time of the end. Here's what Mrs. White says that they will occur. And if you've seen my presentations on Daniel 8 and Daniel 12, you've seen this quote before. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of the prophecies will take place. The prophecy in the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history that is taking place in fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated. So if it will be repeated, should we be studying it? I believe so. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that will be grieved and return and have indignation against the Holy Covenant. And so shall he do. And so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence within that forsake the Holy Covenant, and arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And then she quotes in this here, Daniel 11:30-36. This was published in the Review and Herald in 1976 for the first time. It's from letter 103, 1904. And I put up there, and arms shall stand on his part. Whose arms will be standing for the Vatican on their part? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? Is it China? Oh, no, it couldn't be United States. Or could it? I don't know who it's going to be. That's one of those things that time will tell. And I put down there whose arms. Now I know that Ted used this quote, and he said that it had been removed from the Ellen G. White estates, and I went up afterwards, and I says no, because you can go. It's in letter 103. They did not remove letter 103, and that was written in 1904. And this here letter was written to a guy by the name of Harum, and Mrs. White was looking for donations for him. Continuing, the Lord has a time appointed when he will bind off the word. But when is that time? When the truth proclaimed for these last days shall go forth as a witness to how many nations? All nations. Then shall the end come. If the power of Satan come into the very temple of God and manipulate things as he pleases, the time of preparation will be prolonged. Now, when I say into the very temple of God, I see this as being the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Has the Seventh-day Adventist Church been manipulated as Satan pleases? And that there could be why that this has been publicly prolonged. That's just my idea. Now, we're going to go to Daniel 11:30, and we're going to look at what it says there. And then we're going to have some questions about this here. For the ships of Chittim or Cyprus. Now, as I talked last time we was here, Cyprus does not have ships. So those ships are going to be presented there from someplace else. But apparently it's going to go through Cyprus. We know we have two military posts there, highly classified, both of them. I know one of them deals with COMM, which is communications. Shall come again when the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Now, things to find out on there is who is this word him. Continuing, and arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute, or which is slay, wound, dissolve, the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily. Who takes away the daily? The ships of Chittim shall take away the daily, and they place the abomination that maketh desolate. Who places the abomination that maketh desolate? That's the ships of Chittim. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. Have you seen people corrupt people today by flatteries? It is done all the time. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. What is the exploits that they will be doing? Well, I will tell you, time will tell. By placing it, the abomination of desolation, it looks like it is being moved from one place to another place, maybe from the Vatican to Israel. You remember before the abomination of desolation, they said was Rome. Here, it looks like that they're putting it in Israel. And we will look at more text that deals with that. The characteristics are that when you see the mark of Rome's authority, which Abel talked about, Sunday enforcement, When you see that in a place where it ought not to be, where is the Sunday law not supposed to be at the end of the world? In the glorious land, in the Constitution of the United States. This is from an article I have, Abomination and Desolation article. Let's take another look again at Daniel 11. So we're going to go and look at Daniel 11 again. Hi, Alan.
Hey.
So the glorious land, I see that being Israel, not United States. But the person who wrote this article put it as a possibility as the United States. Now let's go look at this again. For the chips of Shittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. That sounds like it's something that happens on Cyprus. Cyprus is all about an intelligent military island. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. If forsaking the holy covenant is the national Sunday law, what two countries will be involved carrying out this event? That is, the answer to that is the Vatican and the United States. So what is the position of the United States? The United States will be doing the Vatican's work by causing everybody to worship the Vatican. And so are the chips of Chittim United States chips? I don't know if they are or not. This is what I said, time will tell, as things go out. I do know that there's a lot of people, even in the United States, that don't like the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. They don't like him. There's other people that are turning against him. Each week, it's getting worse for them. They have just came down on the International Criminal Court that just came down on Israel. Also, okay, now let's go to Daniel 8. And we'll look about the where I say that it's going to be the Vatican that goes to Jerusalem. Daniel 8:8. Therefore, this is see in Daniel 13 and 14, they ask a question, and Daniel 14 is the answer. Here's what leads up to it, that question. Here's the basis of how long this will be. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven. And this great horn, this is the he-goat. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great towards the south and toward the east and towards the pleasant land, which is Jerusalem. Now, the little horn, as you have seen before, they say that is also in historic Adventism, that is the Vatican. So here we see the Vatican wax exceedingly great towards Jerusalem. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. That's the Vatican. And it cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground and stamped on them. Yet he, the Vatican, magnified, or the little horn, magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him, the little horn, the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So here we have the deity being taken away by the little horn, which has an army which is doing this stuff for him, according to Daniel 11. And his sanctuary was cast down, and a host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Here it sounds like the little horn goes to Israel, and when it is there, the little horn takes away the daily. Who is, and there's questions, who is the host of heaven, and where is the place of his sanctuary? And we're going to look at sanctuary in this context. What is, when he talks about the sanctuary, what is he talking about? We'll get to that in a little bit. The daily sacrifice is a present reading of the text, but no such thing as sacrifice is found in the original. I had to put this in there because some people may not realize that the word sacrifice was added. This is acknowledged on all hands. It is a gloss or construction put on by the translators. The true reading is the daily and the transgression of desolation. Daily and transgression being connected together by the word and. The daily and the transgression of desolation, they are two desolating powers which were to desolate the sanctuary and the host. And that's where they get that the daily is also a desolator, and that's from is Daniel 8. You don't get it from the other ones. This is from sermon number 2, the pioneers' view of the daily. This is some of the things that they believe. So in history, this is what that some of the things that they believed. Now, how do we associate the ships of Chittim with the little horn? That's what I put there. Now, the ships of Chittim takes away the daily in Daniel 11, 30 to 32. The little horn takes away the daily in Daniel 8, 8 to 12. So you have to do the little horn and the ships of Chittim. That's why I believe that the ships of Chittim are doing the work of the little horn. This is why I asked whose arms is or helping the ships from Chittim. I brought this up when I did the Future 2300 Days just recently. Now we're going to look at what did our I said did, but what did they believe? Well, here's what they believed. And the arms shall stand up for the papacy, 496 to 538 AD. See, here's arms, militaries, doing the work for the papacy. Papacy is not the one doing it, but it's people there having helping them do it. And arms shall pollute the sanctuary of Strait, 330 to 538 AD. Arms, militaries, was helping them do that. And arms shall remove the daily. That's a military, that's some type of military force that's doing that. And the arm shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. That's 538. From the year 496 to 538, pagan Rome stood up militarily for the papacy. And in doing so, pagan Rome polluted the sanctuary of strength. Now, are we going to see, what power are we going to see this time stand up for pagan Rome, or Rome, the Vatican, to do their work? Pagan Rome had removed the daily by 508 and placed the papacy in 538. This is from a historical repetition article PDF that I have. They said that the daily was paganism, and we will get into that shortly. Here's a list of a whole bunch of articles that I have on the daily and the abomination of desolation that I have collected. Now, the people who want to use, now we're going to see that that what they define as the definition of the daily has changed over the years. And you can see we're going to talk about who did it and what it is. This phrase, by reason of transgression, means in transgression. Do what it says is that a host, an army, was given the papacy against Christ's high priestly ministry. And see, this is why I asked, who is this army in transgression? If you are going to use a Hebrew correctly and take the false meaning of the daily, it means that in this verse, Christ's high priestly ministry commits sin. It is in transgression. And that's why we can't use this here definition of the daily. We must go to what the pioneers believe. Now let's see what they But how reasonable the text is when you follow the pioneers and Host's army was giving him the papacy against the daily, which is paganism, sacrifice by reason of transgression. In transgression, that is by uniting church and state. The person that wrote that believed that there is what it's going to be, the fulfillment of it at the end. He may be right. I believe that it's a lot more than that. Uniting church and state is part of it. And he cast down the truth to the ground. The gospel, the law, and the Sabbath is what he is casting down to the ground. And I agree with that. And the papacy practiced and prospered. This is proving the pioneer position of the daily. And that there is that the definition of it is paganism and not Christ's ministry in the most holy place in heaven. And then we will see what Mrs. White says about it also. Now let's look at the daily, is what I put up on top. Then I saw in relation to the daily, Daniel 8:12, that the word sacrifice was supplied by man's wisdom and does not belong to the text, and that the Lord gave the correct view of it to those who gave the judgment hour cry. When union existed before 1844, nearly all were united in the correct view of the daily. But in the confusion since 1844, other views have been embraced, and darkness and confusion have followed. Time has not been a test since 1844, and it will never again be a test. And what she says is here, people take this and they take it out of context, saying that time will not be a test against 1844. But this here quote was in context with the arguments about the daily. It was not until 1931 that A.G. Daniels, who was a conference president, came out with a statement where he said that he believed that Sister White endorsed his view of the daily. We reject his conclusion, and we will show you the logic of this. This is from the sermon number 1, the daily history. And when people went back, everybody that went to Mrs. White, they put a log there and what they discussed. When Daniels came out, when they went and looked, they did not find that it was logged in there, that they talked about it. The modern historians that suggested A.G. Daniels' understanding of the daily was correct, and the pioneer position was incorrect, seem not to be very careful to notice that the above passage in early writing is saying. William Miller, lists a whole bunch of people here. All believe the daily symbolized paganism, and they presented this truth in their writings. It goes all the way through. Nearly all were united in the correct view of the daily, and the correct view was given to those who gave the judgment hour cry, and they were given the correct view. And that's why today I say that the daily is symbolized by paganism. Going with what Mrs. White said. In 1901, the old Protestant view was reintroduced into Adventism by Louis Condry from Germany. So in Adventism, this old Protestant view that the daily represented Christ's ministry in the sanctuary became known as the new view. So if you ever see anything in literature talking about the new view of the daily, that's what it is. It's talking about Christ's ministry in the sanctuary. Now we have a statement from A.G. Daniels suggesting that he had an interview with Ellen during the 1910 time period where she endorsed his view of the daily, the old Protestant view called the new view in Adventism, which he had gotten from Condry, who had gotten it from apostate Protestantism and not Viller's view. And these guys call it apostate Protestantism because they went against what Mrs. White was saying about it. And this is from the words of Daniel, take always. This is sermon 3. Daniel 8:11, yea, he magnified himself to the prince of the host, and by them the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. The pioneer view, the Pantheon temple in the city of Rome, that's going back to AD 70. Remember what we said these things was set up. That's the pioneer view. The modern theologians view God's sanctuary in heaven. And that there is from sermon number 3. Back to sermon number 1. W.C. White, Ellen White's son, confirms that Daniel had an interview with Ellen White on the daily in the 1910 time period. But on the record of Ellen White states, there is no record that ever mentioned Ellen White having this, Ellen White on the daily having this interview with Daniels. But W.C. White, her son, says it happened. The only conclusion I can draw from her free explanation of the time and her silence as to the taking away the daily and the casting down of the sanctuary was that the vision given her was regarding the time, and that she had received no explanation as to the other parts of the prophecy. Daniel's statement. And this here tells we can get it. So what he's saying that what he was talking that it regarded that it was time no more, it's not going to be a test, was dealing with the daily once again. And like I said before, people take it out of context. Now, F. Gilbert reported on June 9, 1910, 2010, right? 1910, that on June 8, 1910, Ellen White stated to him that what Daniels and Prescott were teaching, which is about the daily, was a scheme of the devil. The light that was given me of God is that Brother Daniels has stood in the presidency long enough, and I was told not to have any more conversation with him about any of these things. That is from Sermon 1, the daily, the history of the daily. Man, I tell you, if the Holy Spirit told somebody that, if somebody told me that the Holy Spirit told them they wasn't supposed to have any conversations with me, I would know that I need to have an about face. Therefore, now, when the modern theologians are saying you should not be discussing the daily, she was not giving that type of counsel. She was trying to control the controversy being brought into the church at the time, and the situation no longer applies to us today. And the reason being that these people were splitting the church in two. They was dividing the church. And that's why she says that people need not talk about it. In our last Wednesday Bible study and the selected messages, we had some conversations that she had about talking about the daily. And this here is also from the first sermon. It's also Manuscript Releases, Volume 9, page 106. To you also I say that this subject, the identity of the daily of Daniel 8, should not be agitated at this time. She didn't say never, at this time. Why? Because it was not for that time. That is a very important quote right there. Now we're going to look at this here, and this comes from one of those articles. I didn't put which one, but it talks about in Daniel 8, there are two different Hebrew words in the book of Daniel that are both translated as sanctuary. These two words are Kodesh and Mishdash. Kodesh is only used in the Bible to identify God's sanctuary, whether earthly or sanctuary. And Mishdash is used to identify either God's or a pagan sanctuary. See, the first is God's sanctuary in heaven or on earth, and the second is heaven or pagan sanctuary. So when you go to Daniel 8, the sanctuary is mentioned 3 times. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of hosts, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away from the place of his sanctuary, Midash, which is either God's sanctuary or the pagan sanctuary, was cast down. Daniel 8:13. Then I heard one saint speaking to another saint, and said unto that certain saint, which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary, Kodesh, and Kodesh is used for God's sanctuary, whether on heaven or earth, and the host to be trodden underfoot. That is not the pagan sanctuary. And Daniel 8:14, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary, Kodesh, which is God's sanctuary on heaven or earth, is to be cleansed. And this word cleanse in Hebrew means justified. Okay, now this here quote I have, and I'll read what's on top after we're done. Isaiah 29:13 and 14. Wherefore the Lord said, for as much as people draw near me with their mouth and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear towards me is taught by the precept of men. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do marvelous works among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. So, these people will honor God, honor Jesus, but their heart is not in it. In other words, they're what they classified as nominal men, because their heart is someplace where they're not talking about. And instead, they'll be taught by the precepts of men. In other words, the commandments of men is more important. And then this other one, the wisdom of their wise men shall perish. How is that going to happen? And the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. We've noticed that before, that there's certain things that in the Bible are hidden from us until a certain time when that hand is removed, and then we understand. So, is there some things in our church that that people have that honor him, but their heart's not there? I would say yes. Is that also true with Israel? I would say yes, because there's a lot of Israel, Judah, they're considered seventh-day Sabbath keepers, supposedly. But we know that there's a lot of Israel that have nothing to do with the seventh-day Sabbath. Their heart has been removed, but have removed their heart from me. So, Jerusalem will be destroyed again. And I have been studying Daniel 8, 11, and 12 since 1982. I have studied it for a long time. And it's one of those things, as soon as you start studying it, it raises many more questions. And I'm looking forward to a time in Daniel 12 where it says the wise will understand. And I believe some of these things, wise will be, more of an understanding. But if you've seen back in the earlier stages of our church, I believe back then they knew a lot more than we do today about these things. The pioneers.
Yeah.
Much more. We know very little compared to what some of those guys meant.
We need to relearn what they knew.
Yes. And that's why I have some of these things. And coming back to, who is the arms of Jim or Syria? I don't know who they are, but it's very plain that it's the arms of Chittim that is the ones that's going to take away the daily. They're the ones that's going to place the abomination of desolation. And who is those armies? Well, I can tell you right now, the United States is doing the bidding of Vatican. Will they do that again in providing the armies? I don't know, because the time will tell. I don't know what they are going to be. I questioned this years ago, but didn't have an answer for it. And I still don't have an answer for it.
I think all of that you're talking about has to do with the Sunday law, Sabbath, and also the feast, for many. Statutes and judgments, all that's part
Well,
of it.
When what was his name? Doctor that came and spoke at Bible Explorations, I forget his name. He said that when somebody asked him if the daily had to do with National Sunday Law, and he says most definitely.
I just have a question. When it says that it will be removed and they thought it was paganism, isn't paganism like Sunday and all that? So why would that be removed? So I get confused with what that's.
Well, that's why when the new theology come out and said it's Christ's ministry in heaven, what they're saying is there's sin going on in heaven, in the most holy, and that can't be.
No. But if the daily has to do with Sabbath and Sunday, I can see where they can take Sabbath away with the Sunday law, but they say paganism is taken away. That doesn't make sense.
Well, the old veil was the pagan idols, as they said they had up there, was taken out. But you see, that there doesn't make sense either, because Jerusalem was destroyed at one time, not 1290 days, as Daniel 12 says, between the two. So that doesn't make sense either. That's why I said at the time of the end, when these things are fulfilled, the people that are actually studying it at that time, it will become clear and distinctive what they are.
Okay. That was Daddy's study, and then when it happens, you'll know where you are.
Right. And this is why I said at the beginning, if you think that this is going to lead you to what the understanding of the daily is, it is not. Because see, back in 1982, 83, this is one of the things I asked Christ. I says, in order to understand Daniel 8 and Daniel 12, the good stuff in Daniel 8, you have to know what the daily is. Tell me what it is. And I'm still waiting for that.
Well, some people think it's like morning and evening prayer, but that can't be, because that could never be taken away.
Yeah, that's right.
I just feel the only thing that can be taken away is the Sabbath, and you can't have your festivals. You have to do Christmas or something. I don't know, but
well, this is one of the things that I believe that the reason it wasn't given to Mrs. White was because it is something that is especially for the 144,000 of the people at that time.
Right. Yep. Well, thank you for that study.
Many hours.
And hello, Brent. I see you on there. He looks serious.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith. You caught the last half of it anyway.
Very good presentation. Mazel tov.
What'd you say, Brent?
I said I was able to catch the last half of it, so appreciated it. My father passed away earlier this week, so I was on a family call there last hour and a half or so. So I was looking forward to seeing Abel, but wasn't able to get on. But I saw the last half of Keith, so I appreciate it.
Well, you can go
Wasn't
back to
Abel-
YouTube and watch Abel.
What's that?
You can go back to YouTube and watch Abel. I wasn't here last week, but I went and watched both of your presentations on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and watch Abel's too.
And next week, speaking of that, next week we have Brent doing 1 and 2 again of another. It's
a
not the
double
same
banger.
one.
It's gonna be a
So
good one.
make sure you're here again. And today was excellent.
Yeah, we're gonna
So
actually.
Mr. Brett, this is your Jewish Adventist friend, Mark. We just want to offer our sincere condolences to you and your family on your loss If there's anything we can do, is anything other than prayer, just let us know. We're very sorry to hear this. Just want to let you know. Thank you.
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you. It was, we had a little bit of warning, sort of a few weeks beforehand, so I was able to say goodbye and you know, on Father's Day, we prayed together and he passed away the next day. So, I've got a
Wow.
lot of family up there right now and, they're planning like a celebration of life thing in a couple of weeks. So I'm hoping to be able to wrap up here and get up there for that. But, yeah, I appreciate it.
I was
And,
sad because you said that, I remember when you said that, you know, your folks would be coming to the next camp meeting.
yeah, yeah. So my mom's still around and, so she's the priority now. Make sure to take good care of her. And,
Oh, yes.
so she's in pretty good spirits. And like I said, I got two twin brothers that are with her right now, and then my sister. So she's and they did a nice thing at the home that he was in. They did an honorary march, which they don't do for very many people, but the whole staff got together. They when they're taking his body out, they lined up in single
Oh,
file and they played Amazing Grace and let him up to the so that was kind of nice.
it's beautiful, but it's hard to watch.
Yeah, I know.
A
So
lot of tears, yep. Especially with the song.
yeah,
Well, we're gonna see him before long because we don't have very long.
I know. Well,
It's close. And we don't know, I mean, not tomorrow or 5 years or whatever, we don't know, but
yeah,
it's definitely close for us, closer for us than it was our
yeah.
grandparents. It's,
Well,
we're seeing signs.
picking up on some of what Keith said and some of what I talked about last week in terms of the events that started to happen in
Yep.
the third century, fourth century AD. When you really look into it, it's amazing how much influence from then on. Like you had, I'll be talking a little bit about this next week, but you had Sunday law, 321, the Easter law, 326. But not a lot of people realize that Christmas came in at that time too. And what's interesting about the way Christmas came in is that it was actually pronounced by Constantine in 312, but it wasn't until 337 that the Pope that declared that to be the birth of Jesus. But for 20 years before that, it was just a mass they held for Christ on the 25th. And that was the day, that was the most holy day of the previous emperor, this pagan sun festival. It was the invincible day of the sun. So
Oh,
from that point forward, you see this purposeful masking of all the Jewish observances, all the Jewish feast days, a very purposeful thing to distance the church from all of that so that they could bring in their own. So they already had Christmas, you had, you know, you had Passover, first fruits, and unleavened breads all combined to one day, to a Sunday, an Easter Sunday. So they combined three feasts into one. Then they um, added Christmas, and so all that was going on right from from 321 forward, and then it gets even more interesting as you go forward in history. What happened at the fall of Rome and different things, but it's incredible how those are all played out in the temple too. It's all in that pattern. So
Well,
we'll talk a
Brent,
little bit about that next week.
the Pope used to pick which weekend, which Sunday was gonna be Easter. Now I think they have finalized it, changed that, but he used every year, he would pick which Sunday it would be.
Yeah, they changed that in the Council of Nice, where they agreed the first Sunday after the equinox.
Yeah.
Up until that time, the Pope just picked,
You picked which Sunday would
and
be.
and nobody else was celebrating. None of the Eastern churches were celebrating. They never, it was only the Rome and Alexandria that were listening to the Bishop of Rome on what day to observe. All the rest were still observing Passover.
Which
So-
should wake up some people about Christmas. You know, if they can pick which day is going to be Easter, what kind of a holiday and where did it come from?
Well, I'm going to be talking about that next week.
Yeah.
That's where we progress from the rest of the feast days. Because we only talked about Passover. We've talked up to Pentecost. Our last presentation was on Pentecost. So this one is going to be more on the fall feasts, and then the false fall feasts, the Christmas and all those sort of things. So just to see the contrast on why it was done and how it changes history. But absolutely, there's no justification at all for that day. In fact, it went for 30 years not being Christ's birthday, but being just a mass, like Christ Mass, a mass for Christ on the most on the unconquerable day of the sun. It was just a mass that they decided to hold. This was before Easter even, and they only changed that Christ Mass when the new Pope came in after Constantine, and he declared that to be Christ's birthday just to give it some validity. But there was a that mass was put in by Constantine in 20 years beforehand. So that's where you get the church and state thing. When you talk about the military, Keith, and the power, that was put in by the state, and then it was taken over by the church. So
Because some people try and say, oh, it was a pope, and others say, no, it was a state, and Constantine or whatever, and it was like, it was
now
both.
it's very easy to find out. It's see the fifth about 100 years before the Council of Nice, Rome was almost done. It was in such disarray. Economy was way down. They're being attacked from three different sides that split into three different divisions. So their military wasn't set up to defend themselves properly. So the emperor before Constantine, the two emperors before him, those three emperors kind of saved Rome. They reorganized everything. They reorganized the military. They won some victories. They kind of saved Rome. And in doing that, so prior to Constantine, the emperor before him actually persecuted Christians. So Christians were being persecuted, and so were Jews. So when he came through with these sweeping reforms, it was all as good news, like good news. So they accepted a lot of his changes more readily than they might have otherwise. But it was all that's when church and state came together. And the Pope that instituted that as Christ's birthday was the first Pope. This was around 337 AD. First Pope to start to put forward the papal authority that all other bishops had to, because now he had the backing of the state. So that's where it really began. But that same Pope, you read about later on the forgery of the donation of Constantine, where he's, where the palace was given over, and that a bunch of other stuff, as well as state property, as well as the crown, which was all a forgery. But it was started with that Pope, and right after Constantine died. So it's interesting, parallel. We're going to go through a little bit of that next week from their to our time, but also from from the tabernacle, how it foresaw um, like those specific dates are right in the tabernacle pattern too. So it's amazing. But yeah, I'm gonna go back and watch Abel's thing now, and wish everybody a happy Sabbath, and I'll give you a call tomorrow, Sandy.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you, Keith.
All right, we will see everybody next Sabbath. Again, there won't be anything Wednesday. So I'm moving and have a lot to do, so not moving
That's
far.
your excuse.
It's moving
Yeah,
from,
and this is
That's no excuse. Do it in the car while you're moving.
yeah.
and this is Mark here. I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom. Hopefully next weekend it will not be 100 degrees in the great heat dome. This is it's uncomfortable. So we're hoping one of these days in eternity it will be cooler. We're looking forward to great weather throughout eternity, not this type of weather today.
Where are
So
you?
if you're there in the heat dome, please be careful.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Baltimore. It's over 100 degrees, sweltering through tomorrow or Monday. Oy vey. Really?
It's supposed to be 108 here and where I'm at, and they've just decreased it to 105. It's supposed to be up to 105, but yesterday they said it's supposed to be 108.
It's 108 here today. Where I
Yeah.
am.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's
Yeah.
82 here, so you guys come visit me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Where
well,
are you?
it's kind of jealous there. Thank you.
I got to meet Sandy. I got 73 degrees.
Oh, there you go. You're gonna be having icicles out there.
A couple weeks ago, it was 105 here, so I guess this is to make up for it. I don't know.
I
Well,
think
Marty
I saw
looks up.
it goes up to 90 or something for a few days off and on, but mostly it's gonna be the high 90s and then back down pretty quick. It didn't stay up here where we are that hot very long.
Marty looks comfortable. What's the temperature there?
Where?
Marty?
Um,
Marty.
Who was that?
Marty?
Oh,
Oh.
it's in the 90s today. I forgot what, but it's in the 90s.
Okay.
Bakersfield. And Keith's out in
All right.
hand for Violet's in Visalia.
Visalia.
Abel's in Lindsay. I don't know what the heat is there.
It started snowing this morning.
Don't you wish?
You thought it was manna or something, huh?
So Abel, it started snowing and then you woke up.
Yeah.
I realized it was actually cottonwood trees.
Yeah, there you go. We have some kind of trees around here that just recently, everywhere you go, looks like little snowflakes. I don't know what it is. Little itty bitty ones. I don't think it's cottonwood, but it's, I don't know, some kind of trees out there. It's kind of annoying, really.
That's the only ones around here that I've ever seen do that was cottonwood.
I don't think they
It's-
have. It could be.
It's 85 in San Jose.
Oh,
That's a
that's
good
nice.
temperature.
oh,
I don't mind
okay.
that.
92 in Alabama.
92?
What? What was
92.
it? 92?
Yeah.
Ooh, and that's humid too, I bet.
Yeah.
San Jose, you might have some cool breeze over there though.
Yes, it was a little cool last night.
Yeah.
Aw.
All right.
That's one thing about the humidity. I know we get humidity now and then in the
Well, you know what
last
we could
few
do?
years, but used to, we didn't have the humidity and we'd go to Missouri for the summer and they had high humidity. And so 90 back there felt as hot to us as like 100 and over out here because of the humidity.
Well,
I
I got
know
an
when-
idea.
When I
Sandy, I
went,
got an idea
when I
for a
went,
new feature on for BETV, a new feature. Every Sabbath at noon, we'll give the North American weather. There's enough people on to say, and how are we doing in Baltimore? Where are we in Atlanta?
There you go.
when I was in the army in Texas, when I was a young guy, I go and take a shower, and 2 hours after the shower, I feel like I still hadn't dried off yet. I did not like that humidity at all.
Yeah.
Uh,
When I went out east for the first time by the Great Lakes, I remember calling home to my mom and dad, and I had a Pepsi bottle, and it was the first time in my life that the Pepsi bottle was sweat. I said, "Man, if my bottle's sweating, what do you think I'm doing?"
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see you guys later on.
All right. And everybody watching, you can see, we can all see each other. So everybody get on Zoom. I know some of you can and you're watching YouTube or Roku or whatever, but get on Zoom. It's easy. So come and see us.
And it's free.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a good week.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.